Hi guys, it's Mr. Jackson with Karen here to read chapter 20 of Everlost by Neal Shusterman with permission of Simon and Schuster. And I lost my place. But I want to show you guys, look how close we're almost done with this book. So there's two more in the series after it. So when we finish this, we'll start the next one, but we're almost done. That's kind of exciting. So if you'll remember, I want to remind you, in the last chapter, we learned that, first of all fortune cookies cross over into Everlost. All fortunes come true in Everlost. And Allie stole a bunch of the McGill's fortune cookies to read, and the last one she said, that was the last line of the last chapter, said, "Look behind you." Okay. So, chapter 20. The day the McGill got chimed. The McGill held his temper as he stood behind Allie in the throne room, watching her steal his fortunes. Never before had anyone pilfered his fortune cookies, and his fury at her was deep. But for once, he resisted the urge to lash out. He had successfully completed the first 4 steps. Only 8 remained. If his temper caused him to be rash and hurl the girl over the side, he would never know the secret of possessing the living. But since anger was the only way the McGill knew how to react, he just stood there, not reacting at all. The girl, her back still to him, suddenly stiffened as she read her 4th fortune and slowly turned around to see him there. The moment she saw him, he recognized the look of fear in her eyes. It was the first time he had seen her show fear since arriving on the ship. At first, it had troubled the McGill that she seemed unafraid of him, but now he found himself troubled by the fact that she was. He didn't want her to be afraid of him. This new sensitivity in himself was deeply disturbing. "Explain yourself." The McGill's voice came out in a deep, guttural tone, like the growl of a tiger at the moment it pounces. Allie stood straight and opened her mouth to speak, but hesitated. The McGill knew what that hesitation meant. She's going to lie, he thought. And he knew if she did lie, there would be no containing his temper. He would hurl her with such force she would reach the mainland like a cannonball. Then, after a moment, she relaxed her shoulders and said, "I just learned about fortune cookies and wanted to see it for myself, if it was true. I guess I got carried away." It smelled of honesty, enough honesty for the McGill to keep his temper in check. He lumbered toward her, keeping one eye trained on her face and the other on the spittoon. "Give me your hand," he demanded. And when Allie didn't do it, he grabbed her hand, holding it out. "What are you going to do?" she asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the spittoon with his free claw, grabbed a fortune cookie and placed it in her palm, then closed his hand around hers. "Let's find out what our fortune is," he said. The McGill squeezed Allie's hand so hard, not only did the cookie shatter, but her knuckles cracked as well. Then the McGill released her hand and pulled out the fortune slip with his sharp nails. Oh. "Forgiveness keeps destiny on track." The McGill found his anger slipping away. The cookies never lied. Very well, he said. I forgive you. He sat down on his throne, satisfied. Now, get out of my sight. Allie turned to leave, but stopped at the threshold. Forgiveness is the fifth step, she said, and then she left. Allie's brain, or her memory of a brain, or whatever you called the thought process of an afterlife, was working overtime. Granting the McGill the fifth step had been an impulsive thing to do, but at the moment it had felt like the right thing to do. But what was she thinking? There was no right thing, because there was no fifth step. All this stalling was buying her nothing, and in all her time here, she was no closer to freeing her friends. If they were to have any hope, she would have to find the McGill's weakness, and Allie suspected he had one. It would lie in the questions he refused to answer. Why does the McGill stay away from New Jersey? Allie asked Pinhead the next time she caught him alone. It's something he doesn't like to talk about, Pinhead told her. That's why I'm asking you, not him. Pinhead held his silence as a few crew members passed by. When they were gone, Pinhead began to whisper. It's not all of New Jersey he stays away from, Pinhead said. It's just Atlantic City. Allie knew all about Atlantic City. It was the Las Vegas of the East Coast. Dozens of hotels and casinos, a boardwalk full of fudge, and saltwater taffy shops. Why would the McGill be afraid of a place like that? He was defeated there, Pinhead told her. It happened at the Steel Pier. See, there are 2 amusement parks in Atlantic City that burned down years ago and crossed over into Everlost. The Steel Pier and the Steeplehead Pier. They became a hangout for the Twin Pier Marauders. The Twin Pier Marauders gang of really rough afterlights. Probably the nastiest gang there is. Anyway, the McGill raided them 20 years ago, and they fought back. It was a terrible battle, and in the end, they hurtled the McGill's entire crew into the sea and captured the McGill. Captured him. Pinhead nodded. They took him to the Steeplechase Pier and chained him upside down from his feet to the parachute drop ride, and up and down he went, every 30 seconds for 4 years, until one of the marauders turned traitor and set him free. I'm surprised he told you something like that. He didn't, Pinhead said. I was the one who set him free. Then Pinhead looked at her, studying her face. I've answered your question, Pinhead said. Now I have a question for you. I want to know if you are really teaching the McGill to skinjack. Allie carefully sidestepped the question. Well, it's what he wants. The McGill shouldn't always get what he wants. She wasn't expecting that response from Pinhead. But here we go. There's my little Carrie. I know, but she's got to be here. She's got to be with her daddy. The McGill shouldn't always get what he wants. She was not expecting that response from Pinhead. But don't you want your master to have that skill? He's my captain, not my master, Pinhead said, some indignance in his voice. He thought for a moment, looking down, then returned to his gaze to Allie. It was a new, powerful gaze, full of urgency and maybe a little accusation. I don't remember a lot from my living days, but I do remember that my father, or was it my mother, worked in a madhouse. A mental institution, Allie corrected. When I was alive, they didn't have such nice words for them. Sometimes I would get to go in. The people there were very sick, but some were more sick, or were more than sick. Some were possessed. Things have changed, Allie pointed out. They don't think that kind of thing anymore. It doesn't matter what they think. I know what I know. Pinhead's thoughts drifted away for a moment. Allie couldn't imagine what it would be like to walk through an old world asylum. She didn't want to know. Even when I was alive, I knew the difference between the sick ones and the possessed ones. You can see it in their eyes. My mother, or was it my father, said there was no such thing as possession, but you know it happens because you've done it yourself. I didn't drive anyone crazy. Well, said Pinhead, all I know is that if I were living, breathing person, I wouldn't want something like the McGill inside of me. Why should you care? If he skinjacks someone and leaves Everlost, you get to be captain. I'm not the captain type, he said, and he offered her a slanted mudslide of a grin. Don't have the head for it. Allie went back to her cabin and lay down, running what Pinhead had said about the steel and steeplechase piers over and over again in her mind until an idea came to her. A way to defeat the McGill, or at least a way to distract him enough for her and her friends to escape. The plan was simple, and it was dangerous, but it was the best hope she had. All she needed was a small slip of paper and a typewriter. Although the McGill liked no one, he was beginning to suspect that if he ever did like someone, it might be Allie. This troubled him because he knew she would abandon him and escape with her friends if she could. The McGill, however, believed in the power of blackmail. As long as he had her friends dangling like carrots before her, she would do what he wanted. He knew he would never trust her because for the McGill, trust had been left behind with the human condition. The McGill trusted no one but himself, and even then, he was often suspicious of his own motives. He wondered, for instance, if he believed Allie's 12 steps to possession only because he wanted it so badly. Or worse, did he believe her only because he had begun to like her? Since he couldn't trust himself, he decided he needed verification of Allie's honesty. And so, once Allie was below deck, he called up an oversized kid known as Pile Driver. Pile Driver's claim to fame was that he had died in a living room wrestling mishap, while costumed as his favorite professional wrestler. The McGill often brought him along on shore raids to inspire fear in green souls who had not yet realized that pain and joint dislocation were no longer an issue. Today, however, the McGill had a different mission for Pile Driver. Take 2 crewmen and a lifeboat, the McGill told him, after he explained the nature of his mission. Leave in the middle of the night, when the rest of the crew is below. Don't tell anyone, and once you find what you're looking for, meet us at Rockaway Point. I'll hold the Sulphur Queen there until you return. Pile Driver dutifully left, pleased to be given such an important task. The McGill reclined in his throne, picking at the jewels on his armrest. If Pile Driver did the job right, they would soon know if Allie was telling the truth. In her book, Everything Mary Says Is Wrong, Volume 2, Allie the Outcast has this to say about the nature of eternity. Mary may have invented the term afterlives, but that doesn't mean she really understands what it means to be one. Maybe there's a reason we're here, and maybe there's not. Maybe it's an accident, and maybe it's part of some big-ass plan that we're too dumb to figure out. All I know is that our light doesn't fade. That's got to mean something. Finding answers to questions like that is what we ought to be doing, instead of getting lost in endless ruts. So that was chapter 20. What'd you think? So now it's time for some questions. First of all, does the McGill lose his temper with Allie when he catches her stealing his fortune cookies? And along those lines, have you ever been in a situation where someone did something that made you feel angry, but instead of lashing out, you used self-control? And so, like, how did you do that, and how did it feel to do that? Next, why do you think the McGill forgives Allie? And then also, does the McGill like Allie? Yeah, so I feel like there's so many other things to talk about with this chapter, but that's a pretty good place to start. Yeah, so I will see you tomorrow. I miss you guys. Hope you are, enjoying what is supposed to be our spring break. Stay safe. Bye.